Comenzamos el bloque informativo en Extra News.
Señor presidente, muchísimas gracias por recibirnos tan abiertamente. Lo ha dedicado tanto tiempo anoche y esta mañana también. Creo que ha sido una visita de tanto impacto que hubo un terremoto. Que lo sentimos. El primer terremoto que yo he tenido en mi vida. Yo estaba despierto en la mañana, sentí el movimiento, pensaba que posiblemente estaba mareado, no sé, y después me di cuenta por la mañana que no, hubo un pequeño terremoto. Yo nunca he vivido eso no existe en Miami.
Congratulate Pam. She's worked so hard, and unbelievably fair and unbelievably good at law enforcement. I just want to congratulate you. Very special person.
Religious freedom, of course, is the freedom to practice one's own faith and act according to one's own conscience. And it's, of course, the bedrock of civil society in the United States of America and across the world. We know in America, faith nurtures our communities.
I want to welcome everyone here today. Without objection, the chair may declare a recess at any time. I now recognize myself for the purpose of delivering an opening statement. This morning, we'll explore how we can make the federal government work better for all Americans. President Trump promised he would eliminate Washington waste and reform the unchecked federal bureaucracy. And he is delivering on his promise made to the American people. President Trump created the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, to conduct a government-wide audit to root out waste, fraud, and abuse and ensure we protect taxpayer dollars. At the helm of President Trump's effort is Elon Musk, one of the most successful entrepreneurs ever. For decades and on a bipartisan basis, members of this committee have lamented the inefficiency of the federal bureaucracy. We fought never-ending battles against the waste, fraud, and abuse the bureaucracy generates during both Republican and Democrat administrations. One byproduct of this inefficiency, according to GAO, is the near $250 billion in annual improper payments the government issues. But now that President Trump is taking action to drain the swamp and expose how the federal government is spending taxpayer money, which he was elected to do, Democrats are hyperventilating and sensationalizing it. Over the past few days, we've heard wild claims from Democrats that we are, quote, at the beginning of a dictatorship, end quote, and we are in a constitutional crisis. This kind of theatrical rhetoric is exactly what the American people rejected in November. Americans know that Washington needs reform. And DOGE is taking inventory to bring about change and steward taxpayer dollars entrusted to the federal government. Real innovation is not clean and tidy. It's necessarily disruptive and messy. But that's exactly what Washington needs right now. And it's what the American people voted for in November, a departure from the broken status quo. This committee intends to work in partnership with DOGE. We want to reinforce its efforts and not blunt the momentum it's generating for needed change to the federal bureaucracy. At the Oversight Committee, our core mission remains unchanged, identifying waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government, and proposing solutions to make it more efficient and effective for the American people. For this Congress, we created a subcommittee chaired by Marjorie Taylor Greene that is dedicated to working with DOGE. But I expect all of our subcommittees will participating in this effort to make Washington more accountable. I'm hopeful that we can find some common ground with our Democrat colleagues to ensure the federal government more efficiently and effectively serves the American people. I ask all my colleagues here today, who among us believes that the federal government operates at peak efficiency? The federal government has expanded dramatically since the early years of our republic. There are today more than 400 executive branch agencies and sub-agencies, and roughly 1,000 federal commissions. Most of these entities are relatively new creations. They did not exist for most of our nation's history. Not only has the government grown in size and complexity, but it has also taken on many functions once handled by the states or even the private sector. How did we get here? Tom Schatz, the president of the Citizens Against Government Waste, and one of our witnesses today, notes that Congress tends to respond to each new problem that arises by creating a new program or agency. And even if the problem goes away, the program or agency remains. Congressional authorizing committees tend to generate these new programs and entities all too often without sufficient regard to similar federal activities occurring outside of their jurisdiction. Over time, the expansion of entities and programs has yielded an increasingly complex bureaucracy with a massive amount of overlap and duplication. For instance, the Government Accountability Office, the GAO, recently found 43 job training programs scattered across 9 different federal agencies. That's just one of dozens of areas of wasteful duplication the GAO has identified across a range of federal activities. I hope we can learn today from Governor Kim Reynolds, who proposed her own wide-ranging reorganization in Iowa, which the state legislature enacted. For example, she will detail how Iowa consolidated a host of state-level job training programs. Iowa's reorganization also eliminated or consolidated a slew of state agencies, commissions, and vacant job positions. Iowa's example shows that the chief executive of any unit of government, federal, state, or local, is well positioned to propose ways to streamline that government. After all, they're the ones who run it on a day-to-day basis. At the federal level, the president has considerable authority within existing law to reorganize certain government offices and functions. That's the case, for instance, with respect to USAID. But some reorganizations do require changes in law. Throughout our nation's history, such reorganization legislation typically originated from the White House. That's in part because for much of the 20th century, presidential reorganization proposals requiring changes in law were granted special consideration by Congress. I think renewing that special authority, requiring Congress to take an up or down vote on reorganizations proposed by the president, would help facilitate needed improvements in government operations. In the meantime, I look forward to learning more about keys to successful reforms from our witnesses during today's hearing.
You guys all set up? Okay. So this was a very productive day on just a common sense issue. It's an issue where in Texas, listen, we've already signed 2 laws banning men and women's sports. What happened today, however, was setting a standard for the United States of America, ripping apart the executive order that was put in place by Joe Biden that was completely lawless, in fact, overturned by a court, but also establishing just a very common sense standard, and that is no men and women's sports. This is a nonpartisan, bipartisan issue that the overwhelming majority of Americans support, and I and governors and other officials from across the country, as well as women across the country, are so proud of President Trump for stepping up and signing this executive order today. Take a few questions. So listen, Tom Homan and I stay in touch quite often, and we talk about strategies that we may use or ways that we can work together, and I'll just leave it at that. With regard to the president, we again talked about what was maybe the most pivotal issue in his campaign, the one that Americans wanted to make sure he got elected on, and that it was securing the border. First, we talked about how successful it was, how much illegal immigration has dropped in the state of Texas to just a mere trickle. Then we talked about other things that we're doing. Texas has completed more than 50 miles of border wall. We're going to be adding another about 20 miles of border wall here in the coming days. It's under construction right now, and we've acquired more than 100 miles of easement. I'll let the president know that all of that is available for the United States of America. Texas built 2 military bases that can house 2,000 soldiers in one base, 400 soldiers in another base. I made sure the president know that was available to him. I let the president know that we have identified 4,000 jail cells in the state of Texas that can be used as detention facilities. So we're just continuing to find ways we can assist the Trump administration in finally securing our border.
Governor, did you about the $11 billion reimbursement for Operation Lone Star?
Sure.
And offer to help me get that money?
Yeah. So listen, I brought up the topic as I have. Both with Speaker Johnson, with members of Congress. I'll be back again next week to talk more about that with members of Congress. But yeah, he understands that in part, this is in a way a real estate transaction because Texas can transfer to the United States of America a value of well over $5 or $6 billion of real assets on the ground that Texas put in place that will continue to secure the United States for decades to come.
Did any of the flights to Guantanamo leave from Texas?
I have no information about that.
Can you expound on the $5 to $6 billion? Is that land or?
So on the border wall itself, more than 50 miles, and adding the 20 miles we're working on right now. No, this is during the past 4 years. So what Texas is seeking is reimbursement to the state of Texas of about $11 billion of costs incurred over the past 4 years because of the unprecedented illegal crossings that took place that has never before happened. And what Texas did, we've already finished 56 miles of border wall. We have under construction another 18 miles of border wall. We've acquired and in the process of finishing the acquisition of more than 100 miles of land for more than 100 miles of more border wall. Those are real tangible real estate assets for the federal government. It's the same wall that Trump built. So it's the same specifics, same schematics, all that. And so it's turning over an asset that the Trump administration or the United States of America would have invested in. But it's more than that. For the next 4 years, for the United States of America to have a physical location, a base of operation. One is in Eagle Pass, another is in Del Rio, where the United States of America can use about 2,500 beds for, it could be military, it could be for Border Patrol, it could be for ICE agents, whatever the case may be. That is there for them to be able to use. Also, the state of Texas is offering 4,000 prison cells at no cost to the United States that they will be able to use for at least the next 4 years or longer than that if it's needed. And so there are ways in which there's valuable real estate that can be transferred ownership from the state of Texas to ownership to the United States of America. And that the value of that is close to $6 billion.
Did he go for that deal?
He understood exactly what he was talking about. Listen, he has to talk to his advisors. He has to talk to Congress just like I do.
And Governor, can you confirm if Mexican troops have arrived at the border and what you've seen? Is there any progress on that?
Yeah, I personally have not seen them. I know that the announcement has been made about the Mexican troops going to the border. I can tell you what I've seen in the past, and that is whenever Mexico does send troops to the border, it has an immediate impact, an immediate reduction in the number of people crossing the border illegally. And I just have to assume that this will replicate this, and this could even be larger because in the past I've seen 1,000 or 2,000, not 10,000. If they do that, it'll have an enormous impact, and we will see an almost immediate elimination of any illegal border crossings.
You spoken to Congress concerning your reimbursement request so far, and have you spoken to any appropriators? What was their response like so far?
Sure. So I have sat down with the Speaker and the Speaker's office and had the opportunity to visit with all the key leaders of the Texas Republican delegation, which is the largest Republican delegation in Congress. And many of those are involved either in appropriations or budget and things like that. And they are enthusiastically working with their fellow members. I have reports back from them about, listen, this is something that Republicans in particular across the country, but there's no reason why it should be partisan. People are excited about helping out because they know the fact I'm about to tell you. Texas law enforcement have seized more than 600 million deadly doses of fentanyl. Texas law enforcement alone has seized more than enough fentanyl to kill every man, woman, and child in the United States, Canada, and Mexico combined. Here's the point. None of us know, and will never know, how many lives were saved because of Texas law enforcement getting that fentanyl off the streets before it got into other states, killing people across the country.
Sir,
Last question.
Reports of the Mexican cartel authorizing the use of weaponized drones.
Yeah, can you repeat? I missed the first part of your question.
There's been reports of the Mexican cartels authorizing the use of weaponized drones against border patrol agents, as well as these recent shootings on the border. Does law enforcement or the National Guard have plans to combat this?
Yeah, so before President Trump was elected for this second term, during the Biden administration, both Texas law enforcement and Texas National Guard had been fired upon across the border, had encountered drones across the border. And now with this clampdown, that exacerbates the situation with the cartels, and there's every expectation that they're going to elevate their level of activity. And especially with the advancements and capabilities of drones, both the United States and Texas, and every border state, needs to be prepared to defend themselves and maybe engage in responding as the case may be. Thank you all very much.
Muy pronto, vuelve a escuchar las noticias más relevantes en este canal de noticias.